To protect our privacy, we are withholding the last name of the individual in this interview. When Catherine heard Jessica Barnes was missing, she had a knot in her stomach. She had lived with Jessica's husband, Brandon Barnes, for over a year, and the couple had 2 children together. According to Catherine, during that time, she experienced abuse at the hands of Brandon Barnes. She says she experienced every manner of abuse and tried desperately to escape the relationship. It wasn't until a nurse recognized that she needed help following an assault that landed her in a hospital in Maine that she was able to break free with her 2 children. So when Catherine heard about Jessica, she prayed the young woman had found her way to a safe house like she did. But after the horrific abuse she says she experienced during her time with Jessica Barnes' husband, she also knew the outcome may be much different than hers. Catherine sat down with FITSNews to candidly discuss her relationship with Brandon Barnes in the aftermath of the murder charges filed against him last week. Like Jessica's mother, Cecilia Varvera, Catherine hopes to spread awareness about domestic violence. Catherine, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I know this has been an emotional time for you as you deal with, learning of what happened to Jessica, learning that Brandon was involved. But I wanted to sit down with you a little bit and just talk about your time with Brandon because, you spent a little over a year with him starting in 2021. Were you guys just dating?
Uh, in the beginning, no. We were just friends, and then it turned into
Okay.
dating.
Okay. And where were you living when you met him?
I was actually living in a house that my father gave me, right here
Okay.
in
In
Chester.
Florida or so? Chester?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you meet him?
Through an online app called Meet Me.
Okay. So when you met him, you guys started out as friends. Was he dating anybody else at that time?
Not that I know of. He could have been, but I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay. And at some point, I feel like I saw somewhere where at some point you ended up in Florida with him.
Yes. Uh, he had caused a bunch of problems with my dad, and my dad kicked us out of the house. So we went to stay with his legal guardians, Kathy and Richard, in Florida. Stayed at their
Okay.
house.
Okay. And so we're not going to talk about details about your kids, but you have 2 kids. Are they both Brandons?
Yes.
Okay. So you moved to Florida with him. You're staying with his guardians. How old was he at that time?
I believe he was 19, if I remember correctly.
Okay. And when you got there, were there any red flags? Like, did things start to deteriorate after you moved out of South Carolina with him?
Uh, when we went to Florida is when he progressed to trying to choke me and leaving marks all over me to the point I have scars on my body now. But
Okay.
it just got worse in Florida.
And so he would choke you, and was he hitting you or
Yeah.
okay. Was there any other physical abuse?
Uh, Throwing things at me, verbal, mental, and of course the physical.
Okay. And at what point did your relationship become more than friendship?
Uh, when he came to live with me because his mother and stepfather kicked him out of the house.
Okay. So he so that was in South Carolina. So he got kicked out of his house with his mother and stepfather and came to live with you in South Carolina. Your dad and him did not get along, so you moved with his guardians in
Yeah.
Florida.
Yes.
Okay. And when did you learn you were pregnant with this child?
When we were actually in South Carolina, I had our daughter here in South Carolina.
Okay.
Uh,
So before you left for Florida.
yes. She
Okay.
was 3 months old when we lived in Florida.
Okay. And okay, so you're in Florida. And did his guardians know that there was anything going on while you were living there? Or was he did he hide it well?
They knew. They actually kicked him out of their house for 2 days, but let him back in, stating that he changed when I begged them not to because I knew he didn't change.
Okay. Did you feel like you were able to ask for help while you were there?
I've tried, but they would literally just keep telling me that it was nothing.
Okay. And were you, I mean, I noticed, one thing that Jessica Barnes' mother said was that Brandon had isolated her from her family, cutting off contact frequently. Did you experience that when you were with him?
I did. Uh, it was so bad that he used to lock me in my room with a padlock on the outside of my door, and he would drug me up on Benadryl so I'd sleep all day and couldn't go nowhere.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that you got out of that situation.
Me too.
So now at some point, the two of you ended up going to Maine. When was that?
Uh, when we were actually in Florida, it was our second month. I kind of told Brandon a lie. I told him I could get my old house in Maine. My family is from Maine. So we went up there. When we were up there, I was looking for places where I could get out because I have a lot of family up there where I could hide. He was not happy when he found out I lied about the house.
Whew. Did he have any family up there, or was it all your family?
It's just my family.
Okay. And at some point, you got pregnant with your second child, right?
Yeah. I
Was it
conceived my son in Florida.
okay? And then, so you were pregnant when you went to Maine and you were looking for a way to get out of this situation.
Yes.
So, what happened when he found out that there wasn't a house there for you?
Uh, he basically kept punching me over and over again to the point I was put into the hospital.
And you were pregnant at this time?
Yes.
Okay. Did he ever assault your daughter?
Yes. He actually tried to choke her when she was crying one day because she wanted a bottle while I was trying to prepare it. He was slapping her, trying to choke her.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So you ended up in the hospital, and is that the point where finally police got involved?
It was actually the third time I was put in the hospital where the nurse actually came in and talked to me, told me that she knew a place where I could go and hide.
Oh, thank God for nurses. Okay. So you're in the hospital and you have this nurse offer to help you.
Yes.
So what happened at that point?
She called the place for me. They told me to come in the next day, which was September 12th. And on September 12th, they told me to just move right in. And then September 11th is the day that I had Brandon arrested.
Okay. And they charged him with, was it domestic violence?
Yes. And endangering a child.
Okay. So he has those two charges in Maine. What happened with those charges? Did you go to court?
I did. Uh, he never showed up to the court, even though he was in jail. But because he didn't show up, they automatically gave me the 2-year protection order.
So the protection order covered you and the kids.
Yes.
So were you able at that point to get back to South Carolina and away from him for good?
Eventually, because I was able to get a job up there so I could save money to come back down. It just took me a few months.
Okay. Did he try to reach out to you again after you finally got free of this horrible situation?
Yes. One was through Kendall's account, and then
On Facebook?
another, yes, and another he made up a fake account under some weird name to try to reach out to me.
And did you just block him? Did you ever respond? What did he say?
I responded to Kendall because at first I thought it could have been her. I was trying to tell her to get out while she could. And then after a few messages, I realized it was him and then I blocked her.
Okay. So, I mean, when you heard about what was happening with Jessica when she went missing, what were your first thoughts?
Uh, my first thoughts were how to protect my kids.
Right. Were you, did you have any indication where this story would go?
Not at
Like,
all.
did you think, oh, this isn't good. I don't, like, I'm worried about the outcome.
For
I mean, I
me,
guess from
yeah.
your point of view, it could have gone either way because you did get out in a safe house.
Yeah. I was
So,
kind of hoping when I seen the messages on Facebook that she was going to a shelter. I was kind of hoping she was just in a shelter.
yeah. So I know hearing the charges must have been, I know because, we were texting when everything was starting to break. It must have been a shock for you. Um, and a relief that you did get out of that situation. Um,
Yeah.
how, how did you feel when everything started to come out?
I actually broke down crying.
Just a lot.
I was kind of hoping it wasn't true.
And you've spoken to, in the course of this investigation, you reached out to the investigators who were, the lead on this case to describe your experience with Brandon and also Jessica's family.
Yes.
To, just perspective on what you went through. And I know you talked about how he strangled you a lot. Um, and that's ultimately how, according to police, he confessed to killing Jessica. Was that difficult to hear?
Very. That it was just too close to how it lived with me.
Yeah. So he's now in jail, awaiting trial, or unless he takes a plea deal. And you and I talked about going to some of the criminal proceedings.
Yes.
Do you feel like that's going to help you as you heal from your experience with him?
I'm kind of hoping that I get closure because, he never showed up to court when I took him to jail the first time.
Right,
So I'm really hoping I get some closure out of this.
right. And your kids are safe. You're back in South Carolina, and it sounds like you've gone back to school
Okay.
and
Yeah, I'm in college now.
back with your family who he cut you off from. So that's just, I mean, it's just wonderful to hear. Is there any message you would give to anybody that was in your situation? I mean, do you wish you had gotten out earlier? Do you wish you had asked a nurse for help in some of your earlier hospital visits?
Well, I actually went to a church. They're the biggest reason I got away from him. If I could say anything, you can always talk to someone at a church. They'll always keep it discreet and they'll get you the help you need.
That's great advice. Well, as as everything proceeds through through the system, we're going to all keep you in our prayers. And I told you we'll be at the hearing, so going into a criminal hearing and facing somebody who brutally assaulted you was difficult. But I think you're going to find that you've got quite the crew to go in with, um, a lot of
Okay.
support to help. You won't be alone.
No, it should be great.
Well, thank you so much for, agreeing to share your story. I know this is such a difficult time for you, and I know that, this is you're reeling from everything. So I really appreciate you being willing to share, your experience, for people to hopefully learn from. I know Jessica's mom is, very very set on educating people about domestic violence. And that's part of what we hope to do at FITSNews as, this story works through the court system, try to prevent this from happening to somebody else.